Today on This Christian Life.
Hey, Mike, can I talk to you?
Logan, you bet. What's up?
I want to tell you something that God just told me.
A story of God using suffering for good and a phone call that affected over 10 million people.
I grew up in Seattle, Washington.
That's Mike, a radio pro that has spent many years in Christian ministry, but that wasn't always his plan.
I had an aunt, a great woman of God, tell me that you have a great voice, you should get into radio. And I've never even thought about that. Now, the strange thing is, she told me this at 15 years old. When someone tells you something like that, oh, that's neat, whatever. 15, how can I make that happen at 15? So I lived in the suburbs. That's where I grew up, but our family happened to own a house in Seattle, and Seattle Public Schools actually owns a radio station. And so the last 2 hours of my day during high school, my senior year, I traveled to this other school into Seattle and learned radio.
And that was just the beginning for Mike. He went to college, got his degree in broadcasting, he got married to his high school sweetheart, and started a career.
But I actually didn't go into full-time Christian radio for a long time. I was in several of the formats in top 40, country, adult contemporary, and moved to Tulsa, Oklahoma.
He was working in country radio, a dream job for many, but that's when something happened, something that he never expected.
And I went through a really rough divorce. I found out that she was being unfaithful to me. Having been a Christian all along, it just kind of made me really take stock in myself and just question my own faith. I knew I needed counseling. So I was flipping through the yellow pages and found some counseling at a church. And that whole scenario made me want to know parts of God better. And so I got into seminary. About halfway through that process, I got fired from the station that I was at. And it was this interesting thing where it was like God was pulling on my heart to do something different. I thought he wanted me to be a pastor and graduate from school and everything and get out. And I'm like, all right, where am I going to go be a pastor at? But radio kept coming back around. And I thought, well, maybe God wants me finally to be in Christian radio. You know, sometimes getting kicked out the door is the very best thing for you. And it was the best thing for me in that situation.
And that's how God used one of the lowest points in Mike's life to get him on a different path, a path of ministry, working in Christian radio.
And by the way, through this whole process, I met a beautiful woman, and we, dated for a couple of years and got married, and we've been married now for 21 years, and we have 2 kiddos. But through that whole process, I left and got into Christian radio, and I've been in Christian radio ever since.
So Mike's career took him around the country until he ended up in Houston, Texas, working for one of the biggest Christian radio stations in the country.
So this is kind of before people really listened to radio online a whole lot. And people would call in. And the funny thing is the radio station was broadcast on the Sky Angel network. I'm not even sure if it still exists, but it was Christian TV programming. And they also had some audio that you could listen to as well.
So that allowed Mike in Houston to be heard in other states, even states as far away as Nebraska.
So this family in Nebraska, and we're talking a super small town in Nebraska, their son, Logan, would call in to the show every once in a while. And I want to say when he started calling us, he was probably like 10 years old, something like that. And most of the time, it was fun conversation. He would talk about God a little bit. But then one day...
Hey, Mike, can I talk to you?
Logan, you bet. What's up?
I want to tell you something that God just told me.
Okay.
Last night, my dad was roping this calf. And this calf had been born from a really old cow. She didn't have really the greatest milk. She didn't have, like, the vitamin C and stuff.
Okay.
Anyway... She broke her back, and this morning I went out and put her down myself. I was talking to God. I was asking God why she was special. And God said, You know, Logan, but my son was special. But he died for a purpose. It's kind of the same thing. That calf was close to me, and God's son was close to him.
Logan, you're so right. It's true. You think you're going to be okay?
Yeah, I'll be fine. But I wanted to tell you guys that is so important. Just remember, when you lose a loved one or a pet, always remember that God gave his son too. And he understands. He will always understand. Just run to him.
Logan, you're wiser than you know.
Oh, sometimes I don't think I'm wise. Trust me, I've done a lot of stupid stuff. But I've learned from it.
Yeah, but that's what makes someone wise. Someone who learns from their mistakes. Well, thank you so much for calling.
Oh, I just figured I'd better call and share with you guys. Love you.
Love you too.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
After Mike got off the call with Logan, he went to edit the recording before putting it on the radio. Now, normally in radio, an announcer would add more of himself to the phone call. Maybe a quick liner, an opener, or a closer. But Mike didn't add more of himself.
I mean, really, when you listen to that, how could I make that any better? I mean, this kid is so incredibly profound. You know, I got a few phone calls about how this has impacted listeners and things like that. But the amazing thing was, we took that phone call and just put the audio of it on our website. Just the straight phone call and nothing else. It took down the radio station's website. So many people were downloading this and sharing it with friends. I mean, it just took off. Huge. So the next thing that happened was there is a pastor out at a church in California who somebody emailed him the audio of this thing. He listens to it and he's so blown away by it, he wants to play it in his church. So he gets in contact with their media director there at the church and says, can you put this up on the screen and put the words to it so that we can all see what Logan's saying and what I'm saying? So he puts this presentation together, puts some music on it. He puts it on YouTube, and that's when it really took off.
The video went viral, now seen over 10 million times.
You know, I got to say this. It's things like this where I feel like, yeah, I'm in radio, I'm in broadcasting, but it's sort of like, I'm just in the room. How can I manufacture that? That's all God.
After this, TV stations got involved. Logan and his family were interviewed, but the story of Logan's phone call didn't end there.
And this is the funniest part about all this. Now you might say, well, that's sad. It is true. It's a sad story, but my father passed away back in 2009. Somebody sent me this video thinking that it might help and minister to me. Now that's awesome. That's wonderful that someone did that, having no clue that I'm the guy talking to the kid. The other thing that, was kind of funny, it's like, wow, I guess God and myself ministered to myself. That sounds funny, doesn't it? But it's true. It's a conversation with this kid that God used. It's like, wow. And it did help me. It was neat.
More and more people heard the story. But why? Why did this connect to so many people?
I think it's because the fact that what he said at the end was very powerful. If you've lost a loved one, a friend or something, God understands, because he gave up his own son. So run to him, that phrase. In fact, I've heard people say it back to me, just run to him. And it also, I've seen it time and time again, how God helps you minister to others in the area that you've had a difficulty. And so, being through a divorce, able to talk to others that have gone through that. My wife and I, we've, like I said, been married 21 years. We've got 2 kids. Sam, who's now Logan's age, he's 11. And we have a 17-year-old daughter with some special needs. And that's made life a lot different, a lot more challenging. We love her so much. She's diagnosed with cerebral palsy. She's profoundly deaf. She's nonverbal. And she's in a wheelchair. But she is just so wonderful, has the most beautiful smile. But, it's been like taking care of a 3-month-old for now 17 years. She's completely dependent on us. But it's helped us, as like I said, help other special needs parents, parents of special needs kids.
2 Corinthians 1:4 tells us that God comforts us in all our affliction, so that we may be able to comfort those who are in any affliction.
The person that's dealing with it at the time, they may feel like they're the only person going through it, but there's something about somebody finding someone that is going through the same thing that you're going through, especially if God's helped them have victory on the other side. It gives them hope. There's something about commonality. If you're both having dealt with the same thing, it's like you got an instant friend in a way. It does bring to mind people through my situation have always asked me, how do you do it? And my answer is, I can't do it. I can't do it on my own. I have to be with him, or else I can't do this at all.
In John 15:5, Jesus says, I am the vine, you are the branches. Whoever abides in me and I in him, he it is that bears much fruit. For apart from me, you can do nothing. When struggles come your way, when you have to give up something or someone you love,
always remember that God gave his son too, and he understands. He will always understand. Just run to him.
That call was several years ago, but I think his message means more now than it ever has before. We really have to hold on to Jesus, and I think that's what connects us to Logan's call. Jesus is the answer. God sacrificing himself to take on the sin and suffering of the world, so that one day everything can be made new. This Christian Life, a podcast from Family Radio. If you were blessed by today's story, please subscribe. And if you'd like to support the ministry, you can find out more at familyradio.org. And remember, you can support us for free by simply leaving a review on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts. Your support helps others find the joy that is This Christian Life. This Christian Life is a production of Family Stations Incorporated and is not affiliated with Christian Life Magazine or Plus Communications Incorporated.